A woman, alone at a table. The courtroom of Harwick County Superior Court is grand in the old way, dark mahogany panels, tall arched windows through which gray autumn light falls in long indifferent columns. The gallery is half filled. The air smells of old wood and quiet judgment. At the plaintiff's table on the left side of the aisle, nothing. No associates, no paralegal with a rolling cart of files. No family member leaning forward in the row behind her to squeeze her shoulder. Just Eleanor Voss-Hartwell, sitting perfectly straight, both hands folded on the table in front of her. A single manila folder and one yellow legal pad, corner aligned. A glass of water, untouched. Across the aisle, Richard Voss holds court. 3 attorneys surround him, shuffling documents. Victoria Lance sits in the front row of the gallery directly behind him, close enough to touch his shoulder, and she does, once, possessively. 2 financial consultants. A publicist. 4 associates carrying briefcases. The quiet, constant hum of a man surrounded by people who are paid to ensure he never loses. Richard leans back in his chair. He looks over at Eleanor's table, and something shifts in his expression. Not guilt. Never guilt. Something far uglier. Satisfaction. Richard, toward his attorney, voice low but not low enough. She came alone. Again. Attorney Marlowe Price. Mall. Control. Brave. Or foolish. Richard. Without hesitation. Both. He glances at her once more. She does not look back. Her eyes are forward, fixed on the empty judge's bench, as if she is already having a conversation with it that no one else can hear. The bailiff calls the room to order. Everyone rises. Judge Harriet Cole enters, settles, scans the room once, her gaze lingering, almost imperceptibly, on the lone woman at the empty table. Something moves behind the judge's eyes. Curiosity. Or recognition. Eleanor Voss-Hartwell does not waver. She does not reach for her water. She does not look at her husband, at his lawyers, at his fiancée in the gallery who is already whispering something behind her hand. She folds her hands a fraction tighter. And she waits. Because Eleanor Voss-Hartwell has been waiting for a very long time. And she has learned in the long, silent school of a marriage to a man like Richard Voss that the one who waits longest usually wins. The morning session. The morning session begins. Attorney Price rises like a man expanding to fill all available space. Attorney Price, Your Honor. My client, Mr. Richard Voss, has been extraordinarily patient throughout these proceedings. Patient, reasonable, and, I would submit, far more generous than the law requires. He built a business from virtually nothing. He has offered a settlement that any reasonable person would accept. And yet, here we stand, because the plaintiff, toward Eleanor's table, that particular glance of theatrical pity, has chosen to pursue this matter further, apparently without counsel, without representation, and without any visible means of support. Quiet laughter, barely suppressed, from someone in the gallery. Victoria's lips pressed together, not suppressing a smile. Permitting one, Eleanor writes something on her legal pad. One line. She does not look up. Judge Cole, Miss Voss-Hartwell. You are proceeding pro se today? Eleanor. Her voice is low, precise, and absolutely without apology. I am, Your Honor. Judge Cole, carefully. You understand the complexity of the asset division claims before this court? Eleanor, I understand them completely, Your Honor. A beat. The judge holds her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then, nods. Price moves into his first line of argument. The Voss Technology Asset Portfolio, the premarital business holdings, the claim that Eleanor contributed nothing of substance to the company's growth during their 18-year marriage. He speaks fluently, confidently, the way a man speaks when he believes the story he is telling. Attorney Price, Mr. Voss founded Voss Technology Solutions in 2003. At the time of marriage, the company was already generating revenue. Ms. Voss-Hartwell, at her own admission, never held a formal position within the company. She managed the household. She attended charity functions. She was, in the traditional sense, a wife, a supported spouse. And the law, Your Honor, is very clear about the distinction between Eleanor, quietly, not. She also wrote the initial licensing framework that became the company's primary revenue model in 2006. But we'll get to that. Silence. Price stops, just for a half second. Then recovers. Attorney Price. Your Honor, the plaintiff is Judge Cole. Miss Voss-Hartwell will have her time to respond. In the gallery, someone shifts. The woman 3 rows back, who attended only to watch Eleanor lose, leans toward her companion and whispers something. In the front row, Victoria studies her manicure. Richard turns in his chair, just slightly, just enough to look at Eleanor directly for the first time this morning. He is expecting to see distress, a woman holding herself together by threads. He sees instead a woman who looks as though she is waiting for a bus she knows is coming. He turns back. His jaw tightens, barely. Price continues. The deposition excerpts are read aloud, curated selections from Eleanor's own words, isolated from context, shaped to paint a portrait of a woman who was decorative, dependent, and dismissible. Lines she spoke about her husband's genius, about his drive, about how she had stepped back from her own professional work to support his vision. Each line is read with careful emphasis, designed to humiliate. In the gallery, someone chuckles softly at the word supportive wife. Eleanor's pen moves steadily across her legal pad. Richard leans back further in his chair, arms crossed now. The body language of a man watching something he has already decided the outcome of. At one point, Price produces a financial document, a clean chart showing the trajectory of the business, Eleanor's name appearing nowhere in the official record. Attorney Price. 18 years, Your Honor. Not one filing, not one patent, not one incorporation document with her name. We ask only that the court reflect what the record reflects, that Eleanor Voss-Hartwell's contribution, though valued within the private sphere of marriage, does not entitle her to nearly half of a company she did not build. The chart faces the gallery. Richard's name everywhere. Eleanor's name nowhere. Eleanor looks at the chart. Her eyes move across it methodically, the way you study a document you have already read 50 times and are now simply confirming your memory against. She writes one more line on her legal pad, underlines it twice. Then she folds her hands, and she waits. The hidden bloodline. Interior. Flashback sequence, 3 months earlier. Hartwell Estate, Connecticut. The kind of house that doesn't announce itself. No gate with initials. No fountain at the drive. Just an 8,000-square-foot Georgian manor set back from the road behind 200-year-old oaks, understated in the way that only genuine generational wealth can afford to be understated. The Hartwell family has never needed to signal. They simply are. Eleanor sits in the drawing room across from her father. A fire. 2 cups of tea. The kind of silence between 2 people who have never needed to fill space with words. Clifford Hartwell letting his hup down. Eleanor. Tell me what you need. Eleanor. I need to do this myself, Papa. Clifford. That is not what I asked. Eleanor. I know. She turns to look at him. Those matching dark eyes, his eyes in her face, the family inheritance she never chose and never doubted. Eleanor, if I walk into that courtroom flanked by Hartwell attorneys and Hartwell money and Hartwell names on the gallery, the story becomes about the family, about the power, and it should be about the marriage, about what he took, about what I actually built, for him, and what he erased. I need the court to see what he did when he thought no one powerful was watching. Clifford studies his daughter for a long moment. Clifford, And when they've seen it, the faintest smile crosses Eleanor's face. Not warm, not bitter. Something older than both. Eleanor, then you can walk in. Wider flashback, Hartwell Estate. The library. Eleanor and grandmother Adeline. Adeline Hartwell is seated in a wingback chair that appears to have been built around her, or perhaps grew to accommodate her over the decades. She holds Eleanor's hand with fingers that are frail in appearance and iron in grip. Grandmother Adeline. In a voice like pages turning in an old book. Soft, precise, unforgettable. You know, your grandfather's first business partner tried to cut him out in court in 1959. He let the man speak for 3 days. Prepared every document, let the other side believe completely that they had already won. Eleanor, what happened? Adeline, the smallest, most devastating smile. On the 4th day, I walked in with his attorney general and 2 senators. The other man settled before lunch. Eleanor exhales softly, part laugh, part grief. Adeline, there is a particular kind of arrogance that only grows in men when they believe a woman has no one, when they are convinced that she stands entirely alone. Let him grow it fully, Eleanor. Let it bloom completely. And then cut it at the root. Flashback, Hartwell Estate. The study. Clifford and 2 attorneys. These are Hartwell attorneys. Quiet men in dark suits who carry their briefcases like they carry secrets, carefully, without show. On Clifford's desk, 18 months of financial forensics. Bank records Eleanor had quietly photographed during the marriage. Emails. The original 2006 licensing framework, 57 pages in Eleanor's handwriting. A preliminary valuation of Voss Technology Solutions that differs from Richard's submitted valuation by approximately $43 million. Clifford. To his Ede War. She goes in alone as long as she chooses. The moment she signals, we are there in 15 minutes. Lead attorney, we'll be at the Harwick Grand, 4 blocks from the courthouse. Clifford. Good. And gentlemen, when we go in completely. Nothing held back. Back to present, Eleanor at the courtroom table. She touches the pearl necklace at her throat. Once. Just once. Fingertips to pearls. Her grandmother's pearls. Given to her mother. Given to her. Older than her marriage, older than Richard's money, older than everything Richard Voss believes he has built. The Hartwells do not show their cards early. They never have. They simply make sure before the game begins that the cards they hold cannot be beaten. And then they wait, patient, composed, certain, for the exact right moment to lay them on the table. Eleanor lowers her hand from her pearls, picks up her pen. The morning session resumes. The rising tension. Interior. Courtroom 14. Midday. The lunch recess has come and gone. Richard Voss has eaten well, catered sandwiches and sparkling water brought by an associate. Eleanor ate nothing at her table, or if she did, no one saw it. The afternoon session carries a different weight. Price has found his rhythm. The gallery has grown. Word travels fast in courthouse corridors that a wealthy man is methodically dismantling his ex-wife in open court, and people, for reasons that diminish them, enjoy watching. Richard's confidence has fermented through the morning into something headier. He speaks to his attorneys now without lowering his voice. He gestures. He laughs. Once, twice, a rich man's laugh that carries. Richard, to Price, audible 3 rows back. She hasn't objected once. Not once. Does she even know what she's doing? Attorney Price. Wyatt. Apparently not. In the gallery, Victoria uncrosses and recrosses her legs. She checks her phone. She is already, in her mind, at the celebratory dinner she has booked for tonight. And yet, 3 rows behind the plaintiff's table, a courthouse clerk pauses in the aisle with a stack of files and looks, once, toward the back entrance of the courtroom. The great double doors at the rear. He looks for half a second too long. Then moves on. No one notices. At the defense table, Price produces his final exhibit for the day, a sworn declaration from Richard's former CFO testifying that Eleanor had never attended a single board meeting, never filed a single business document, was never, in any formal sense, a participant in the business operations of Voss Technology Solutions. She was provided for. Generously. And now she asks this court to grant her a share of something she neither built nor contributed to. Attorney Price, to face her directly. With respect, and I mean this genuinely, Miss Voss-Hartwell, no attorney would take this case, because no reasonable attorney believed it could be won. The gallery breathes. Somewhere near the back, a phone buzzes and is hastily silenced. Eleanor looks up from her legal pad. She meets Price's eyes across the room. Her expression is, and this is what unsettles him, though he cannot say why, almost tranquil. The tranquility of someone who is not afraid of what is coming because they already know what it is. Eleanor, quietly. May I respond to that, Your Honor? Judge Cole, you may. Eleanor stands. She picks up a single page from her folder, one page where Price has stacks, and places it on the judge's desk. Eleanor, Your Honor, I'd like to submit Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, the original Voss Technology Licensing Framework. Dated March 2006. Author field, if you'll direct your attention to the bottom right of page 1. The judge reads. Her expression does not change. But her eyes move back to Eleanor with a new quality of attention. Price moves too quickly to look at his own copy. His face does not move, but the pen in his hand stills. Richard Voss leans forward in his chair. The back doors of the courtroom do not open. Not yet. The final isolation. Interior. Courtroom 14. Late afternoon. The light has changed. The autumn sun has moved. The long columns of light through the tall windows have shifted from gold to gray amber, and the courtroom looks older, somehow, in this light. Quieter. More final. Eleanor's single exhibit has created a ripple. Price has spent the last hour attempting to contextualize it, minimize it, reframe it. He has deployed a forensic document specialist who testifies carefully that the handwriting attribution, while consistent with Eleanor's known samples, cannot conclusively. Eleanor listens. She does not interrupt. She writes nothing. She is very still. Richard watches her from across the aisle, and something small and cold moves through him, just briefly, before he dismisses it. He has looked at Eleanor across tables for 18 years. He knows every version of her stillness. This one, he decides, is defeat. The stillness of a woman who has played her only card and watched it fail to turn the game. He is almost right. That is what makes him so wrong. Judge Cole calls a 20-minute recess. The gallery empties. Coffee, phones, the quiet chatter of people who have come to watch someone fall. Eleanor remains at her table. The bailiff glances at her. A young man, early 20s, professional neutrality in his expression. But he brings her a fresh glass of water without being asked. Sets it next to the untouched original. She looks up. Something in his face, young, earnest, the ghost of someone's son, someone's boy who was taught to be kind. Eleanor, very quietly. Thank you. He nods, steps back to his post. She looks at the water, looks at her hands on the table, those steady, folded hands that have not trembled once today. She thinks of her grandmother's voice, of her father's face across the fire. She thinks of what it cost to sit here alone and absorb every word of today's dismantling, every curated quote, every document bearing only his name, every chuckle from the gallery, every careful, devastating pause from Price. And she thinks of why she chose this. She wanted the record to be complete, She wanted every word of his arrogance on transcript. She wanted the contrast to be total, what he believed she was, right next to what she actually is. But in this moment, in this particular gray-amber light, with the gallery empty and the table bare and both glasses of water untouched, she is very tired, not broken, not defeated, but tired in the way of a woman who has been holding herself at full strength for a very long time and is now, in a 20-minute recess in an empty courtroom, allowing herself to feel the weight of that. She bows her head, just slightly, just for a moment. Her hand moves to the pearls at her throat. And then, from the corridor beyond the great double doors at the back of the room, she hears footsteps. Not one set. Many. Measured. Deliberate. Unhurried. The footsteps of people who have never needed to rush because rooms always make room for them. Eleanor raises her head. She breathes in. Slowly. Completely. And for the first time all day, just once, just briefly, she closes her eyes. Interior. Courtroom 14. The recess ends. The gallery filters back. Richard returns to his table, a to-go coffee in hand, a quiet word being shared with Price that ends in a subdued laugh. Victoria settles into her front row seat and smooths the front of her cream blazer. The usual cast reassembles. The machine of Richard's legal team reconstitutes itself, files opened, laptops unlocked, the comfortable choreography of people who believe this afternoon is a formality. Judge Cole has not yet re-entered. Eleanor sits at her table. She has not moved. Her hands are folded. Her legal pad is closed. She has placed the pen down precisely parallel to its edge. She is no longer writing anything down. She is finished preparing. It begins with sound. A sound the courtroom doesn't immediately identify, a low, resonant vibration from the corridor beyond the rear double doors, like the approach of something large and certain and perfectly unhurried. It is the sound of expensive shoes on marble, multiple pairs, the kind of step that knows it will not be stopped. Someone in the gallery looks back. Then someone else. The double doors open, and Clifford Hartwell enters courtroom 14. He does not push the doors. They are opened for him by a young associate in a dark suit who steps to the side with the practiced invisibility of someone who has been trained specifically to be unseen so that the man he serves can be fully seen. Clifford Hartwell walks down the center aisle of the courtroom, and the room changes. It is not dramatic in the theatrical sense. There is no explosion of sound, no fanfare. It is dramatic in the deeper sense, the sense that something has fundamentally shifted in the room's architecture, in its gravity, in who holds the weight. He is 74, and he moves like 74 has never been less relevant to anything. His charcoal navy three-piece suit is immaculate, his silver hair perfectly groomed. His dark eyes sweep the room once, not with curiosity, but with the comprehensive, unhurried assessment of a man who is cataloging everything and finding most of it insufficient. He does not look at Richard Voss. Not yet. Behind him, 4 Hartwell attorneys enter. Real attorneys, the kind who do not carry rolling briefcases because they have associates who carry things for them. They enter in a quiet line, each one placing a briefcase on the table behind Eleanor's, each one opening it with the synchronized precision of a group who has rehearsed nothing, because they simply know what they are doing and have always known. The gallery is very still. Richard Voss has turned in his chair. He is looking at Clifford Hartwell, and his face has done something complicated and involuntary. A slight opening of the jaw, a fractional widening of the blue eyes. He knows that face. He has seen it twice, at his wedding, briefly, and once at a Hartwell Foundation event years ago where he'd been a peripheral guest and Clifford Hartwell had walked past him without acknowledgement. He turns to Price. Something urgent is passing between them, silent, gestural. Price has gone very still. But Clifford has not reached the front of the room yet, because the double doors open again, and Grandmother Adeline Hartwell enters courtroom 14. She walks with her silver-handled cane, tap, step, tap, step, a rhythm so precise it sounds composed. She is in her deep forest green coat dress, her white gloves, her emerald pin holding her white chignon in perfect place. She is 89 years old, and she enters a courtroom the way a tidal wave enters a harbor, quietly, completely, and with the absolute certainty that everything in its path is about to change. Two aides flank her, not holding her, merely present, the way wings are present on a bird that has chosen to walk. She does not hurry. She moves down the center aisle, and she looks, as she passes each row, at the faces of the people in the gallery with a gaze so clear and so absolute that more than one person looks away first. She reaches the front of the gallery. She settles into the seat directly behind Eleanor's table. She reaches forward and places one white-gloved hand on Eleanor's shoulder, gently, firmly, permanently. Eleanor does not turn around, but her shoulders drop exactly 1 centimeter. The infinitesimal release of someone who has been holding something very heavy alone and has just been relieved of half the weight. Grandmother Adeline, and a voice just above a whisper, but perfectly, surgically clear in the silent room. "I'm here, my darling." 3 words. The gallery breathes them in like oxygen. And then the doors one final time. A woman enters whom several people in the gallery recognize immediately. Then a second. Then, behind them, a figure that makes the courthouse clerk in the back row go very straight in his chair. Senator Margaret Olin of Connecticut, Hartwell Foundation board member, family friend of 40 years. Followed by Cecilia Hartwell Vance, Eleanor's cousin, whose name is on 3 hospital wings and a university endowment. Followed by a man in a dark suit carrying a single folder, the state's most decorated forensic financial examiner, retained privately, whose presence here requires no announcement because every attorney in this room knows his name and knows what his presence means. They fill the gallery behind Eleanor's table with a quiet, devastating completeness. Richard Voss is no longer leaning back in his chair. He is very upright, very still. The coffee cup sits on the table in front of him, and he has not touched it, and it is going cold. Victoria Lance, in the front row, has stopped looking at her manicure. She is looking at Adeline Hartwell's white-gloved hand on Eleanor's shoulder, and her face has done something she will later deny. It has gone pale. Price leans toward Richard, fast and urgent. Attorney Price, barely a whisper, but the silence is total, and it carries. Is that Clifford Hartwell? Richard. Eerily terrible. Something in his voice that was not there this morning. Yes. Attorney Price. Richard. Why is Clifford Hartwell Richard? She never told me. A silence that belongs to the whole room. Clifford Hartwell takes the seat beside his mother, beside Adeline, and he looks across the aisle at Richard Voss for the first time. A direct look. Unblinking. Unhurried. The look of a man who has all the time in the world and none of it for this. Richard looks away first. Judge Cole re-enters. She stops just past her chamber's door, takes in the room, really takes it in, and her expression, behind all its professional control, does something subtle and absolutely human. It registers recognition. She knows the Hartwell name. She has, at this moment, the quiet, precise expression of a judge who understands that the shape of this afternoon has changed completely. She seats herself. She organizes her papers. She looks at the plaintiff's table, at Eleanor, sitting exactly as she has sat all day, hands folded, legal pad closed, and then at the gallery behind her, transformed. Judge Cole, Mesher, entirely professional. I see we have additional observers joining us for the afternoon session. Welcome to courtroom 14. A breath. A beat. Eleanor finally turns her head, not to the gallery behind her, not to Adeline's hand still resting on her shoulder, not to her father sitting beside her grandmother like a wall beside a mountain. She turns, slowly, and looks at Richard Voss. He is looking at her. And she sees in his face the precise moment he understands. She was never alone. She was never abandoned. She was never without support, without power, without a bloodline of extraordinary consequence standing ready behind her. She simply chose, with full deliberation, full strategy, and full knowledge, to let him believe otherwise. She let him perform his confidence for a full day, on the record, in transcript, in front of a judge, in front of a gallery, in front of the law. She let him build his case on the foundation of her supposed powerlessness. And now she is going to pull that foundation out from beneath him like a thread from a cheap suit. Eleanor turns back to face the judge. She picks up her pen. And she speaks. Eleanor, Your Honor, I'm ready to proceed. Richard Voss has aged visibly in the last 4 minutes, not dramatically, not in the way of movies. In the quiet, genuine way of a man watching a structure he was certain was solid develop cracks in the foundation, slow cracks, spreading, and nothing to be done. His attorneys are in conference. A quick, low, urgent conference, heads together, the shuffling of papers in a new direction, a phone produced and immediately pocketed. The choreography of a legal team that has just had the floor of its strategy fall away beneath it. Eleanor stands. She does not have many documents. She has the original 2006 licensing framework, 57 pages in her handwriting, with the signature of the attorney who witnessed its creation, now seated in the gallery behind her. She has 18 months of quietly photographed financial records. She has the forensic financial examiner's report, prepared privately over 6 months and now formally submitted as plaintiff's exhibits 2 through 47. She has the gap between Richard's submitted company valuation and the actual valuation, a $43 million gap, documented with the precision of people who do not make errors and do not allow for them. She speaks clearly, quietly, and completely without rage. This is the most powerful thing about her, that she is not performing anger. She is delivering fact. And the facts are devastating. Eleanor, Your Honor, the claim was made this morning that I contributed nothing of substance to Voss Technology Solutions during our 18-year marriage. The record, the actual record, reflects otherwise. The 2006 licensing framework authored by me generated approximately 64% of the company's revenue for the following 11 years. The defendant rebranded that framework in 2009 under his own name, a rebrand that I approved naively and without legal counsel in writing. That writing is Plaintiff's Exhibit 12. A murmur from the gallery. Clifford Hartwell does not murmur. He simply sits. Adeline touches the emerald pin at her chignon. Once. The gesture of a woman watching something she already knew was coming arrive exactly on schedule. Eleanor, the defendant, submitted a company valuation of approximately $90 million. The independent forensic assessment, Plaintiff's Exhibits 31 through 43, places that valuation at $133 million. The discrepancy is not accidental. Price is on his feet. An objection, timing, foundation, admissibility. The judge listens. Rules. Overrules. Richard Voss does not hear the ruling. He is looking at the gallery. At Clifford Hartwell. He is doing math, fast, desperate math, about who Clifford Hartwell knows, who he can call, what kind of weight that name carries in this county, in this state, in every room that matters. The math is not going in his favor. Victoria Lance has shifted in her seat. The cream blazer now looks like a costume, the wrong costume for the scene that is actually being performed. She looks at the back of Richard's head, and something moves across her face that is not love and never was, and is now entirely unmasked calculation. She is calculating, at speed, whether this ship is the one she intended to board. Eleanor concludes her evidentiary presentation. She closes her folder. She looks at the judge with those hazel eyes, gray gold in this afternoon light, and she delivers the final line of her prepared argument. Eleanor, for 18 years, Your Honor, I supported the construction of something extraordinary. I did it quietly. I did it without formal credit. I did it because I believed that what we were building together mattered more than whose name was on it. I no longer hold that belief. The courtroom is silent. She sits. And from the gallery, barely audible, barely there, Grandmother Adeline Hartwell's voice. Grandmother Adeline, silently, to no one in particular and everyone. There she is. Richard Voss puts his hands flat on the table in front of him. His attorney is speaking. He is not listening. He is looking at his hands on the table, those hands that signed rebranding documents, that accepted credit, that extended to receive what she built and called it his own, and for the first time all day, all week, perhaps all year, he understands what he has done, not with remorse, not with tenderness, with the cold, clarifying recognition of a man who realizes he has been outplayed completely, patiently, and without cruelty by a woman he spent 18 years underestimating. Her triumph interior. Hartwell Estate. 3 weeks later. Late afternoon. The drawing room again. The fire again. But different. Fuller. Clifford in his chair by the window. Adeline on the settee with her tea. Eleanor seated on the floor. Yes, the floor beside her grandmother's feet, her head resting against Adeline's knee, the way she sat as a girl when the world was large and family was larger, the pearl necklace at her throat, a glass of wine, finally touched. The settlement, reached 4 days after Eleanor's evidentiary presentation, with a speed that told its own story, was $61 million, plus full attribution rights to the 2006 licensing framework, plus a published correction in the company's corporate history. Not revenge. Record. Adeline runs one hand through Eleanor's hair, the same gesture from 40 years ago, the same certainty in the touch. Grandmother Adeline. You were never alone, Eleanor. Not for one day of your life. Eleanor. I know, Grand. I just needed him not to know. Clifford looks at his daughter. Something moves across his face. Not pride exactly. Something more complete than pride. The expression of a man who recognizes in his child the best of everything he ever hoped to be. Clifford, your mother would have stood in that gallery herself. Eleanor. Not quite fully. I know. That's why I only needed the two of you. A beat. The fire. The tea. The afternoon light. Because here is the lesson that courtroom taught, the lesson carved into the transcript of that afternoon in Harwick County Superior Court, available to anyone who wishes to read it. Never mistake someone's silence for emptiness. Never mistake someone's stillness for defeat. And never, never mistake the absence of visible support for the absence of support. The most dangerous women in the world are not the ones surrounded by people shouting their names. They are the ones sitting quietly at an empty table, hands folded, water untouched, waiting with complete certainty for the moment they have chosen to let you see exactly who they are. Eleanor Voss-Hartwell chose her moment, and the room changed. Before you go, tell me in the comments. 1. If you were Eleanor, could you have sat through that entire morning alone, absorbing every word without breaking? What would have broken you first? 2. At what moment in this story did you realize Richard Voss was never going to win, and what gave it away? 3. Do you believe the most powerful people are the ones who show their strength immediately, or the ones like Eleanor who choose exactly when to reveal it? Drop your answers below. Your thoughts build this community. Your voice matters here. If this story reached you, if Eleanor's quiet strength, her grandmother's hand on her shoulder, her father walking down that aisle, gave you something today, please give this video your like. Share it with someone who needs to know that being underestimated is not the same as being defeated. Subscribe to Karma's Heiress, because every week we tell the stories of the women who waited, who prepared, who endured, and then, in exactly the right moment, showed up completely. This has been Karma's Heiress. I'll see you in the next story. To nast down, the tap of a silver-handled cane on marble. Measured, deliberate, certain. Step, tap, silence.